Will, if the Mets are to truly get back into things here, how much of the responsibility falls on their top players to produce in big moments?
Yes, Sal, I'd argue that that's their whole season in a nutshell right there. That's what we've been talking about for a little while at this point. And for me, their offense this season comes down to two words: frustrating and inconsistent. And that's got to change, right? And it is changing a little bit, I think, at least, over the last couple of weeks. We need to see more of that. I've been harping on that issue, Sal, really since they got swept by Cleveland a few weeks ago. That's when I said, look, they need more from their core players. They need more from their stars. And right now they're getting a little bit more from guys like Francisco Lindor. Starling Marte is stepping up a little bit. Mark Vientos had a nice, few weeks since his recall, of course. But the way this team is built, the front office said to this team, look, prove to us that you guys can win. Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo, those types of guys. So far, they've come up a little bit short. And right now, what I want to see from them going forward is coming up in big moments. That's what this team needs, and they need those guys at the top of their lineup to deliver when it matters most.
Yeah, Will, you touched on everyone you mentioned is a guy in the lineup, because that's sort of the whole thing with the Mets coming into this season was, well, they're kind of taking a gamble on a lot of pitchers who are maybe flyers, 1 years on guys who have reason to think they might have a good year, but not a lot of track record. Luis Severino in particular, who pitched great last night. He's given them a lot of length in the games that he's pitched. And the whole point was supposed to be, well, this lineup is pretty good. Maybe they'll put themselves in a position where we're regretting that they didn't make more moves for the rotation in the offseason, or maybe they'll have to do that at the trade deadline. The issue is it a little bit too late, which is sort of weird to be asking about a team that's only 3.5 games back of the wild card, but they're also 7 games under 500. The NL picture is just so strange right now, because it's a little bit like, all right, so if you know that Pete Alonso is pretty good, you know that Francisco Lindor is pretty good. If those guys start performing and the Mets win a little bit more and they stay in this kind of just below 500, just outside the wild card picture, I still don't really know what that tells you about what they should do at the deadline, because they've dug themselves this hole.
Yeah.
They're in regardless of whether or not the players who we know can perform start performing to the back of their baseball card, that doesn't mean that you're going to suddenly leapfrog the 6 teams ahead of you to even get to that 3rd wild card spot.
And more specifically, they need their top players. Like Lindor has put up, I hate to say empty numbers, because the numbers are what they are the last couple of seasons, but ultimately they turn out to be empty numbers. The team is out of it, they're buried, and then he puts up the big stats. Forget even the stats, because ultimately with these guys, generally they'll be there. It's the big moments that can change games, which can change series, which can change seasons. That is when the Mets need to have their guys deliver in the big spots. Last night, J.D. Martinez did just that. Let's make the call to the bullpen and welcome in Jon Hein. Jon, is there any way the Mets can get into contention, serious contention, without their top players being main contributors?
No, they can't. I mean, I know Hannah just said they're 3.5 out of the wild card. That's true. I think every team in the National League can get that wild card spot if they finish a little bit over 500. But the big names need to produce, and they just haven't done it. That's why everyone was so excited about J.D. Martinez doing that last night, because that used to be a regular thing Pete Alonso did. Or McNeil would get a big hit, or Nimmo would come up with a huge catch, or Lindor. Well, forget about Lindor. But the bottom line is those guys would deliver in key situations, and you just haven't seen it this season. And the good news for the Mets is they aren't that far out, and they can get in. And we saw what Arizona did when they got into the playoffs last year. They ran the table and almost won the World Series. So if the big names can live up to the big contracts, or those who want big contracts moving forward, this team can actually make some noise. Look, I'm not going to get excited because they took 2 or 3 from the Marlins, who you, Sal, me, you, and 7 other people could probably beat. But you want to ride that momentum into the Padres series. You win some series. Next thing you know, you're close to 500. And you can make a second half push. But if Alonso and McNeil and Nimmo and all the names don't deliver with the bats, all that great pitching that's happened is going to be a complete waste. The big bats need to have big games in big spots.